Hey, welcome back to Fed Up, the number one podcast where you can get up on all things Federal League. I am your host, Josh Stoll, and with us is executive producer Chris Miner. We've got an amazing episode for you today. You'd think we would run out of interesting people in this league eventually, but we keep finding them in all corners of the league. This time, Lakeville Lobo, Brian Ludwig will join us, talk about his career as a coach, as a Twins bullpen catcher. He's just got a lot of great stories. So excited to bring those to you. Of course, we'll do our max bat scoreboard roundup. We'll look at what's on tap for the Federal League, and then we'll send you to each of your baseball diamonds for the upcoming week. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and launch into our max bat scoreboard roundup. Remember, you can save up to 40% when you put in an order of 24 or more bats in. It's an unbelievable deal on some excellent quality lumber. Plus, you get that free gift of either the team bat bag or the fungo. That is the best way to save money on your team's bats for the season. There were 16 games across the Fed between our last episode and this one. Some tilts that will definitely play a factor down to the AA and AAA. The first one we're going to take a look at took place between the St. Croix Valley Silverbacks and the South Metro Saints. The St. Croix Valley Silverbacks on top in that one, 9-2. We'll go to our executive producer for some feedback.
Happy to be here, Josh. How was your weekend?
Better than yours by the looks of it.
Well, I was trying to find the intern. Didn't do a teaser video or anything like that, so I spent my weekend chasing that tail. I will say, it feels like we're all sitting here going, wait, the season start, wait, what? What just happened? But we're just having to running into a case of everybody trying not to suck and just sucking right now. So it is what it is. It's early season stuff. We'll see what happens from here. But I think the bigger talking point would be the Silverbacks and the usual suspects they have still coming to the plate, banging extra base hits on that turf out there, puzzling our sticks at the plate. And so kudos to them, Noise and Dougie and all those guys are still doing what they do over there. And we have some stuff to figure out. So let's talk about how well they're doing and talk about us some other time.
Well, yeah, the Silverbacks were a team we had kind of middle of the road, but certainly they can hit the ball. And don't worry, Chris, it's a long season. You got plenty of time to recover. 16 more games, in fact. Look forward to you guys putting it together soon.
Hey, new look coming. Maybe that'll help. We get to see Vesely for the first time. We're playing down at Kapuya Island or whatever, Kaposia Landing, I think it is, for the first time. So maybe that just a little turn of the page is what we need. So we'll see.
Well, there you go. They say momentum is your next day's starting pitcher, and I'm sure you guys have a good one lined up. Maybe we'll look at that more on what's on tap. In other action around the league, the Rockford Rail Splitters took on the St. Michael Angels. Rail Splitters all over the Angels in that one. They win that game 11-1. St. Michael drops to 0-2. Red West Legends and the Minoka Grays, the game that wasn't, in a scene right out of Bull Durham, they go ahead and create their own rain delay with a broken sprinkler line behind home plate. Rumors are floating around that Red West might be a little shy on guys for the game, so maybe Tup was pulling up some of his old tricks.
Might be an opportunity. We're always looking for new angles here and things to do with this show. Team Fed, if anyone's got some spare time and has pays for background checks and whatnot, send us a message.
The Lakeville Lobos righted their ship with a pair of wins since we last joined you. A 7-2 victory over the Milltown Outlaws and a dominating 12-1 win over the Vesely Vulcans.
Settling in like most thought they would. It's just weird. They've had such a run for the past few years, particularly last year, when you just see a hiccup like that. It's just a natural thing to be like, but it looks like they're back to being Lakeville.
Minnetonka Mustangs keep up their winning ways with an impressive win over the Capital City Cannons, 11-1. The Mustangs nearly at the win total. We projected them that already, and it's only May.
Somebody get these guys a Twitter or a ghost Twitter or something. Let's get some steam with these guys and get them looped in.
Couldn't agree more. I'm excited to see what's going on in Minnetonka. They're classically known as the other team in that town, but
we don't talk about Minnetonka teams enough.
Maybe you're right. A couple of them are really good, and maybe the Mustangs are joining that ilk.
Right.
Another team that's pretty good, the Hastings Hurricanes, 11-1 over Milltown. Brett Compline Pitched 6 innings in that one, allowed 7 hits, just the 1 run, walked 3, and struck out 4. Jordy Horsch was 3 for 4 with a pair of doubles, a single, and 2 RBI. Alex Harrington, Mike Bauer all had multiple hits. Canes go ahead and move to 3-0.
Pretty cool to see them keep the energy going from last year. It sounds like they're piggybacking these games with the Hawks town ball games a couple of these weekends. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure last weekend was one of those. I might be wrong. But, doing that is a pretty rad deal if you've been to Vets Park over there. It's a nice little joint on a weekend night, especially when you get people around there with the concessions, all that. I bet you it's a pretty cool vibe they got going over there right now.
Tuckner is an absolute marketing mind, in my opinion. And yeah, I love what he's doing with that squad. Maybe the more impressive win, though, was the 6-1 win over Newmarket. I think that Newmarket team is sneakily good. I say sneakily, but I mean, this is a team that's been in the championship game the last couple of years. But given the offseason they had, I'm going to call them sneakily good. But a 6-1 win, 2 wins over the week, Hastings 3-0. I think this team is a legit top contender.
I think so too, and especially they haven't been timid about or getting in the water here. They just went ahead and just started scheduling heavy, and it's proving to be working for them because obviously they must be throwing all right and they're hitting the ball. Good for them.
The Lonsdale Jokers have a flair for the dramatic. They had another impressive win. Needed a comeback this time to beat the Northfield Millers. They are victorious in that game, 8-7. Brian Voshepka, think I'm saying that right. I did some homework on it. I tried to get it right because it feels like we're going to be saying his name a lot. He picks up his second win of the season, had a couple of hits, as did Bert Westerman. Lonsdale, 3-0.
Does Bert still have the stash? Do you think he does? He's got to, right?
He's got to. Yeah, that's a trademark at this point.
Yeah, maybe the Jokers. If you've hung out with them, they kind of have this. You can tell they're dogs, but they have this kind of don't give a shit about them, if that makes sense. But they're winning, so they don't ask how, they ask how many, right?
East Metro Mammoth opened their season up against the River Falls Groupers, taking notes from that stumbling block from Lakeville. The Mammoth did not succumb to the same fate. They were able to hold on for the win. Of course, Matty Grill, a complete game there. Mammoth wins 6-2.
Yeah, I think I responded to the East Metro Mammoth, who I think put some money into their graphics on their Twitter account this year. Looking good though, something different. But I responded to their tweet about their opening day. I'm like, about time, right? So you wonder if they're rusty, but I'm sure all those guys have been playing 50 games for other teams anyways. So Nate Stark looks like he had 4 doubles, which nobody talks about him. He needs to be talked about a lot more when these all-around best players in the league conversations. And saw Casey Johnson had a couple hits as well. So usual suspects showing up for them. 2 of the quieter ones, I might say. But East Metro, off to the start we thought they'd get off to.
St. Anthony Norsemen got their first win of the season, bullying on those Capital City Cannons, who are seemingly struggling out the gate here. Capital City falls to 0-3. St. Anthony now 1-1. Lars brought us a sneak peek of a game last week. A little peek in. He brought us the St. Louis Park Snappers taking on the Metro Loons. This was a really competitive game. Those new look Snappers do get the victory in this one, 8-7 over a Loons team that I think might be better than that 500 that they've been projecting at for years.
Sure, yeah, and their offense is capable of putting up runs with anybody, and the Snappers probably getting their sea turtle legs a little bit, getting back on land with the whole new group and this and that, but sounds like the type of game you'd expect from the teams we think they'll be this year. So I'm looking forward to whenever they match up again.
A team that dropped their opener, the Burnsville Bulldogs, have rebounded nicely. They are now 2-1, the most recent victory being a 9-2 contest with the Chaska Diamonds. In our final game with a score for the week, the Elko Chuggers victorious 4-1 over the St. Paul Senators. Senators now 0-3. Chuggers moved to 2-1. Well, there are 4 teams yet to open up their season: the Apple Valley A's and 3 teams in the West: the Waconia Lakers, the Eden Prairie Flyers, and the Chaska Voyagers. All of those teams will open up this coming week. We'll check out more of that in our next segment. But there are 12 teams now who have played 3 games. It's not a huge sample setting, but that is 1/6 of our season, right? If you're comparing it to a Major League Baseball season, that's approximately 27 games. It is 27 games. I did the math ahead of time, so don't look too impressed.
You had time
But
to do
let's
the math from not playing all these games that everyone else is playing. Sorry to the Mammoth for giving you static for not playing. What is going on? I didn't know so many teams weren't playing haven't played yet. My bad.
So of those 12 teams, I'm going to gloss right over that. Of those 12 teams that have played 3 games, there are 5, stick with me here, 5 that have either lost all 3 or won all 3. So I thought it'd be fun to just take those 5 teams and do a little game, Trend or Mirage. Everyone knows how to play that. So let's go ahead and start in the South. Most of the teams are in the South. Hastings Hurricanes, 3-0. Trend or Mirage?
I think that's a trend. Can't argue with what they did last year, and it doesn't seem like much has changed since.
Yeah, this is a layup to kind of start this game, get us into it. The Hurricanes in 3 games have scored 28 runs. They've allowed 2. It seems like they're putting brand new names in the box score on their Twitter page every single game. This team, I think, is absolutely stacked. Maybe the only question, do they have the pitching depth to make a tournament run? But Pfeffer is a stud. Andy Otto, I know, is a stud.
Well, the thing is, you can talk about every team and whether or not they have the pitching to make a tournament run. Do those teams have the sticks? I think this team sounds like they have both. Apparently, it's been hurricane season all spring. It's carried over from last summer. Whatever.
Clever. The next 2 I think are a little tougher. The Lonsdale Jokers are 3-0. This is a team who've won a couple of close games, just a narrow 4+4 in the run differential. Trend or Mirage?
I feel like some of these teams in the South deserve a lot more attention, and they get sold short because they don't partake in some of the extracurricular stuff that some of us do. And so I'm not going to sell the Lonsdale Jokers short. I think it's a trend. I've seen what they're capable of firsthand on the business end of it in the playoffs multiple times. So I'm a believer in the Jokers. I am serious about that. So serious.
It's an absolutely stacked division. I do think it's the haves and the have-nots, right? When you've got Hastings and Newmarket and Lakeville up at the top, Elko, Lonsdale seem to be for real already with multiple wins and just, multiple contests already. But then you've got Vesely and St. Patrick, Northfield. They're down. There's no denying that. I think those teams will continue to struggle most of the year. But then you have the Milltown Outlaws. They've started 0-3. They're a team that I thought tooled up quite a bit in the offseason, a team that I thought might be, I would say a mid-seed in that AA, kind of like they were last year. But they've started 0-3. Trend and Mirage.
I think I'm going to use Mirage for the first time because I don't believe a team like this. Like you said, there's some new stuff going on down there a little more. It's early, and I don't know. We just happen to have a chance to take a look at who they've lost to. And it's 3 of the teams we've been talking about for the last, 10 minutes. So it's Lonsdale, Hastings, and Lakeville. It's not, I wouldn't say it'd be fair to expect anyone to come out of that 1 and 2 this early with so many things to figure out. So I'll take Mirage.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Yes, their opponents are combined 8-1 already on the season. It's been a tough schedule. It doesn't get any easier. They have Newmarket up next. Then they've got Lakeville again. Maybe this team starts 0-5 and, they could potentially, be looking panic button, maybe breaking into that AA, bordering on that A, but I see this team kind of in a vein like yours, the South Metro Saints. Maybe it's the orange and black color scheme, but I do think it's a team that needs to find their footing, establish their new vibe. They've got a new core that they've kind of put some new pieces in, and we're going to have to see exactly who they come out and what they want to be and how they respond to some early adversity. But our last team that is finding themselves winless after 3 games, Where's that orange? The St. Paul Senators 0-3, Trender Mirage.
Are they orange? I thought they were red.
They're orange.
Well, let's say they are. Let's say they are orange. The Orange Senators, I believe 0-3. I'm afraid to say I believe that is a trend. I have to be careful because I haven't seen them yet this year. We've had competitive games before, and given our start, I'm not saying anything about what would happen in a game between us two right now. But I am afraid, just given the last few years and what it appears is going on, this is going to be a trend this year.
Maybe Cody Stahl can reach out and clarify if it's red or orange. Well, that brings us to our next segment. Before we look at what's on tap in the Federal League, let's go ahead and take a look at what's on tap at Tap Society. I picked tap number 11. It matches my jersey number, the Verbal Tip IPA. It is from Falling Knife Brewing Company in Minneapolis. This was rated 4 out of 5 on Untapped. It's 7.3 ABV. It's a wonderful beer. I've had it. It's on tap currently at the Tap Society, but only for a short time. If you're not an IPA person, maybe check out one of their ciders, or tap number 21 is Hazy Prickly Pear. This one from Wild State Cider. My wife loves these. They're out of Duluth, Minnesota. Also ranked 4 out of 5 on Untapped. Check those out. Tap Society has happy hour every day from 3 to 6 where they have $2 off appetizers and wings. If you haven't been there, you absolutely need to check this place out. Tell them you heard about it. I'm fed up. A loaded schedule between this week and next. 23 games on the schedule from Wednesday to next Tuesday. Battle that could go a long way in determining a division champion. The Apple Valley A's open up their season at home against the Rosemount Pipers. Would expect Christopherson to go for the Pipers. I will tell you that Herm Solomon is going tonight for the A's. So it should be a great game. We've got a lot of our better hitters will be present. So we hope to give them all that they can handle.
Well, early season, I mean, you put it off so long, and I see why. You get to run into the Piper guys right away. So, I mean, I don't blame you. But the parity in these divisions is just getting better and better. It's just the gap is getting narrower and narrower, right? But that being said, both of your squads have been finishing towards the top, as long as I can remember. I'm sure you guys are looking forward to it. Herm is a dog, man. So, I mean, if you're putting the ball in someone's hand, you put it in a guy who's just going to go out and dog you however you need to get through your first game, right? So I might actually just come. If it's down in this area, since I live in Napa Valley, maybe I'll have to come check it out. Get a little behind-the-scenes footy.
Well, it'd be great to see you in person, buddy. It'll be the debut for 3 new A's. Zach Goodwin, Herbie Carr, and former Voyager Tyler Naraki will be making their debuts. The A's have a pair of games this weekend as well, where they will be in a short mini series with the RC Rockets. They'll play them both Saturday and Sunday. The Rockets have a third game this week as well, as they will take on the East Metro Mammoth on Thursday.
I mean, for both of you. I mean, 3 games in a weekend this early on is fool's errand, if you ask me, but you got to do what you got to do, right? Rockets got some younger guys, right? So you'd think maybe I don't know what their pitching looks like, but that's a tough little weekend with you guys and the Mammoth. But, I mean, you guys got to recover from whatever happens against Rosemount and then try to get through 2 more. I'm sure it's going to be some things learned through this weekend.
Another team opening their season, the Chaska Voyagers, will take on the Minoka Grays in the confines of Castle Field. Chaska's been a little active on Twitter recently. Looks like they've tapped into some town ball teams, secured some pitching, a lot of lefties by the sounds of it. So excited to see how they do, how they fare, and just what we can expect out of the Voyagers this year.
They got one of the dopest logos you're gonna find. Jamie and those guys are so awesome, and it sucks when the core starts to dissipate a little bit. So I mean, it's awesome for that squad to get a little momentum here, because it has sounded kind of like a bummer there for a minute. So it's good to see some of this news pop up as we've gotten closer to the opener.
They have another game as well this week. They'll take on the Waconia Islanders. Lakeville Lobos in action. They'll take on the St. Patrick's Shamrocks from King Park.
Does Toppers deliver out there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh,
I
They'll
kind of
also go on the road, maybe outside of Topper's radius, where they will go to take on the Lonsdale Jokers. An early season South matchup to keep an eye on. 3-0 Jokers versus 2-1 Lobos.
And if there were a game to mic somebody up, Lonsdale and Lakeville, based on what I've seen, would be a fun one. Both of those teams got a little bit of that swag to them, and when they face off against worthy foe, the volume gets turned up a bit, and so I think that has the potential to be one of those types of games.
Pony has got another game as well. They will open up their season Friday, May 16th, when they go to Alley Magnet and take on the Burnsville Bulldogs. Burnsville will also play host to Eden Prairie on Sunday, the 18th. Pipers will take on the St. Croix Valley Silverbacks in their second game of the week. St. Anthony Norsemen are in action as they will take on the Minnetonka Mustangs. We'll see if that's another one for the left-hand column for the Mustangs. Newmarket Milltown, another game we mentioned earlier that will be one to keep an eye on. St. Patrick, looking for their first win, will also take on the Elko Chuggers. Minoka Grays will host the St. Michael Angels. I'd love to see Pluff go on that one. I know he threw maybe had an outing that didn't quite go the way he wanted it to in the opener, but I would love to see that team see Dan Pluff for the first time. Angels will have a chance to get on the win column before that tilt as they take on the Red West Legends Thursday, May 15th. Maybe another dozen or so games that we didn't get to on this edition of What's on Tap, but so much progress will be made towards defining the AAA, the AA, the single A, the B, so many games, and it'll be a fun week of baseball that we get to cover next week.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start uh, clearing off some more memory and stuff to handle all this data.
Lots to look forward to. Should be a great week of baseball.
Yeah, good luck to all the teams, your guys is included, who are making their debuts this weekend. Stay healthy. Don't get too heated. It's early, so save some bullets if you can.
Well, it's time now for our guest for this week's episode. If you're keeping track at home, we are now up to 3 Lakeville Lobos in the history of the pod. Certainly want to try and space that out, but it seems to be a team that just attracts personalities. You know, Tori was an unbelievable guest. He is one of our highest rated episodes to date. Matt Meyer, can't say enough about him and how he joined the pod and told such great stories about Mike Trout and his time with AAA ball with the Angels. And now bringing on Brian Ludwig, the backstop. He's done so many things in and around the game of baseball and softball. Can't wait for you to hear some of his stories.
Lakeville, you can say we've done 3 about Lakeville, or they've been on 3 times, but they just happen to have guys. I mean, I think we know what moves the needle here is the stories, right? And when these guys hop on, it's not like they're sitting there talking about it's not Lobos party time here. We're not talking about them for 40 minutes. They're just telling stories, baseball stories. And I think that's what guys love to hear. And guys like Ludwig, who are in the game in different avenues, that have so many have different perspectives than any of us could even dream of. You love hearing stories from guys like that. So, we'll find you no matter if you got 8 guys for the Lobos, or if there's a guy out in Vesely, whatever, we'll find you. Just let us know where you are.
I am grateful for some of the recommendations and tips that we've gotten from some of you. If you do have a teammate that you are having beers with in the parking lot and you just happen to think this guy has some pretty good stories, let us know. Let us reach out. Let us bring him onto the podcast. Let's share him with the league. But for now, let's go ahead and bring on Brian Ludwig. Our guest today is Lakeville Lobos backstop Brian Ludwig. Brian, welcome to Fed Up.
Josh, thanks for having me, man. And I just wanted to say thank you for this podcast. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for all of our players to hear some of the great baseball stories from guys that have come to the game, stopped playing in junior high, all the way up to our former professionals like Dave Meyer and Matt Meyer that we've had on the podcast recently. So thank you for bringing these stories to light for all of the community here.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, but we're excited to hear your baseball story. Why don't you go ahead and tell us yours?
Yeah, so it's kind of a winding road. I started off playing at Woodbury High School as a Royal, graduated in 2004. Took my game over to Augsburg University with Keith Bateman. I played there until 2008. Got an opportunity to coach in the Minnesota Twins youth training organization as a clinician, kind of a volunteer thing. And that led me to an opportunity to be a bullpen catcher for the Twins. And kind of started off as a number 2, 3 guy, did a few home games here and there, a lot of rehab work with guys coming back from the injured list. And I've just continued that rehab work ever since 2010 when they opened Target Field, working with multiple training staffs, multiple coaching staffs, multiple front offices, but just kind of being that guy that's always available. And then from there, I've also had opportunities to coach club baseball with PhD Academy, Great Lakes Baseball Academy, some youth organization, youth associations in the area, Cottage Grove, obviously is where I'm from, so I do a lot of coaching with them. And then recently coaching club softball with the Midwest Speed and the manager of the Lakeville Lobos, Tori Holt, working with their catchers in the off season, and also grateful for the opportunity to work back with my alma mater at Augsburg as a volunteer assistant, and just kind of getting my feet on a baseball field any chance I can.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You're somebody who's obviously been very active, both in the games of baseball and softball. But maybe start off by telling us just how you and Tori and the Lobos found each other.
Tori found me by dumb luck. I was finishing up law school and had an opportunity to, while I was kind of getting my feet set practicing law, met through a friend of a friend, Charlie Ciccolello, who's the coach, obviously, at the Hill Murray Pioneers. And he offered me an opportunity to just be an assistant coach for the summer. I was still trying to get my coaching chops under me, and serendipitously, Tori Holt was one of the assistant coaches as well. We got hired at the same time. Both went there for a year and did some work with Chit was sick and the Pioneers, and got to talking about catching and all things like that. And Tori's like, "You want to play 35 plus ball?" I'm like, "I'm not even close to that just yet, buddy." So we stayed in touch over the years while I was still managing and playing for the St. Paul Mudhens, which was a Class A team. And I got kind of towards the end of the road there where I had kind of aged out of the guys that I was working with. They were mostly Great Lakes Academy ball players that were 18, 19, 20 years old and wasn't really playing with my friends anymore, right? So to speak, which is what this league's all about. So Tori reconnected with me and I was going to be coming of age, as they say. And I jumped over to the Lobos and turned the keys over of the Mudhens to Great Lakes Academy for them to use it as a feeder system. And, the rest is history. We won a championship in 2020.
Always nice to have a guy like you in the farm system waiting to age up to the 35 plus ranks. Tori is seems to be the ultimate connector. He's involved in so many things and just happens to run into so many people. We've heard his stories of how he met guys like Jamie Steinberg through quote unquote dumb luck. Just fun to see how a roster comes together and how a unit gels like that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for those types of things where he takes advantage of those relationships. And there's a real special thing that's going on over in Lakeville, and I think you'll hear it to a guy that when we're on the ball field, it is kind of transcendent of teammate. A lot of us consider each other family. We attend our kids' grad parties. We make sure to frequent our sponsors. We spent Wolves playoff game all together at Rudy's Red Eye Grill in Lakeville after the game against Vesley on Saturdays. I think Tori and a lot of the guys that have been around the Lobos for a long time have done a great job of building that culture where we all just really get along. And once you get plugged in, it's kind of hard to not fall in love with it all over again.
Wolves won, so keep doing what you're doing in terms of that and keep the NBA franchise rolling here.
It was prime rib night at Rudy's, so it was an easy sell for a lot of our guys.
Yeah. Let's continue to chip away at the Lobos here a little bit. Obviously, the opening day loss to River Falls. You guys have seemingly bounced back with a couple of wins over the weekend. Talk a little bit about the keys to your season and for your team.
Yeah, I think, when you guys talked about it in the preview episode, you kind of hit the nail on the head with us. It's going to be about continuing to pitch well and play defense well. Unfortunately, opening day, Kelvin Nelson, who was going to hopefully be one of our newer faces, sustained an injury. Not sure the extent of it yet. So we got into a tough spot pitching wise and didn't play great defense. That's not a knock against the groupers. They hit the piss out of the ball. And they put up runs in bunches, which you need to do against any team in this league to be competitive.
Twins bullpen catcher is a very unique thing to add to one's resume. I have to hear the story about how that came to be.
Yeah, I got the opportunity coming out of Augsburg to coach with the Twins Youth Training Academy, and the guy that was running it at the time was the lefty specialist for the Twins. And so when there was ever lefty on the bump to start a game, or if there was one coming into a game during, he would throw batting practice to the guys from the left side. Got to know him really well, obviously through the Twins Academy. He was one of the guys that started up with PhD and then Great Lakes before I think he moved down to Fort Myers. But the Twins were moving into Target Field. And up to that point, if guys got injured, it was just a one-way ticket down to Fort Myers, right? Like they had all their facilities down there. The guys went down there to rehab. The training staff mostly stayed down there except for the team doctors. But now they're moving to Target Field, and the team was still down at Fort Myers, and they had guys that had not even set foot in the stadium yet. So he reached out to me and was like, hey, Scott Baker, Nick Blackburn, Liriano, they want to come up and see the stadium and maybe throw on the mound to just get a feel for kind of the confines. And then there may be an opportunity to do more of that. We just don't know. And so I'm like, all right, let me leave my contracts class here at law school. I'll be over at the stadium in an hour. And yeah, I mean, I wish I could say it was more complicated than that, but it was really just somebody knew that, you know, they liked me, and I had been doing some stuff with the Twins already, and I was a catcher by trade, so got an opportunity and it went well, and the rest was just kind of history. I've worked with multiple coaching staffs with Gardy and Molitor, now Rocco, multiple front offices, multiple training staffs and team doctors. And the role that I've kind of kept since then has been working on that rehab side with guys coming back from injury. Done some spot opportunities here and there for home games, St. Paul a couple times once they transitioned to AAA, just as an extra body. But yeah, just kind of kept myself always on call and never really said no to anybody. So as long as I kept saying yes, they kept having me back.
Has to be a testament to you, to your ability to be able to transcend through multiple regimes like that. It feels like everyone wants to bring in their own guy, you know, kind of throughout the organization. But how involved are you with some of these pitchers? I mean, you can't just be back there. They would know it if I got back there, and they would immediately replace me. Are you giving feedback? Do they have a way they like to see the guys receive the ball? Just tell me like a little bit about that back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, as far as transcending a lot of those regimes, it's a lot of just when those guys come in, really the questions they ask is not, can I bring so and so? It's who have we been using? And so because I had been there, it was just like, well, Brian was our rehab guy. If he still wants to do it, then just have him keep doing it. You know, when Molitor took over for Gardy and Rocco for Molitor, that's kind of what happened. They were just like, well, who's been catching rehab when we're on the road or during off days or when we need a guy? Like, who is it? And that was me. So they just kept my name on the list and I kept coming back. But as far as that feedback side, it's actually gotten really interesting because early on, it was a little bit of youth for me of just not really knowing what they wanted and more of just like, I'm, you know, and as all catchers are, we're in that service position. That's what we're there to do. And so a lot of times I would ask the questions of, you know, you want to throw a sweeping slider into the left-hand batter's box. Where do you want me to set up to start that? And they would tell me and I'd set up there and then they would move me around and be directional with their glove. But now that we've got all these cameras and stuff at Target Field, especially on the mound, like guys are tracking so much data that on top of the numbers, they are really interested in what I'm seeing. And so they'll ask me all the time after bullpens, like, you know, when I've caught a guy like Joe Ryan, he'll ask me like, how's my changeup look? Does my fastball, you know, are you seeing what the numbers are saying that's doing? And so like working with a lot of those guys has been a bigger shift, not necessarily from like feedback as like a coach would give, but very much from the perspective of, you know, you're a catcher, you see a lot of this. Is my ball doing what it's supposed to be doing? Am I going to get hitters out with this kind of stuff? You know, guys that I've worked with, and it's kind of a quick aside, but you know, when we went and picked up Michael Pineda, he was coming off of a Tommy John, and they knew like he was just going to be a guy for an entire summer that was coming back. And I spent that entire summer with him, like 3 days a week. Go down there, long toss routine, flat ground routine, you know, live bullpen towards the end of the year. He was throwing to hitters, but I spent that entire summer with him. And I remember one bullpen specifically where he cut his curveball loose for the first time. And it didn't feel that pull in the back of his shoulder. And he immediately stopped and looked at me and kind of did this big smile like only he could do because he's just a giant teddy bear. And he was like, I got it. It's back. And so, like, that's some of the cool things that, they see that type of stuff. Being a part of those moments was cool. Chris Paddock is another great example when he was kind of coming back from injury, getting ready for that playoff run. And everybody was wondering, what are we going to get from this guy in the playoffs? And then he comes in and just lights it up. Like, it was the same type of thing. He just ramped up, and he's just such a grinder, such a good dude. But it was every time when we would do some of those rehab sessions, what's my curveball looking like? Is this going to get hitters out? Like, they see the numbers, but they do want that feedback. And it is kind of reassuring.
Yeah, when we've had guys like Frank Viola and Matt Meyer and Dave Meyer, guys who've been at that level for as long as they have, they talk about the people behind the scenes who are just absolutely vital to an organization's success. Everyone from the clubhouse attendants to, yes, the backup, the bullpen catchers and the guys who are helping get guys right. So just as a massive Twins fan, thank you for your service to the organization.
Yeah, I have had the unbelievable opportunity to see so many guys come through this organization and succeed. I remember, Johan Duran coming up as a prospect. They brought him up and put him on the mound like right after they installed all those cameras, and they wanted to get numbers on him and a couple other guys. I went down for that, and just like seeing this guy try to explain to me in broken English at the time what his splinker does, and you're looking at him just like completely glazed. I'm like, buddy, I don't think a baseball is supposed to do that. You're not supposed to be able to hold the ball that way and make it do that at 98 miles an hour. Like, you either get to throw that ball, but it's going to be soft, or you're just going to throw a power sinker. And he's like, no, I hold it like a split. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to work that way. Sure enough, he throws it like, okay,
unreal.
We got something here. And now I got to go buy myself a new thumb.
So what's harder to catch? Is it 103 from Duran, or is it something with 22 inches of run?
I mean, that hard stuff is, they rarely miss with that hard stuff. They know where they're throwing that fastball. The guys that were always the hardest to catch, I even think back to like college or high school, were the ones that threw 85 but had no clue where it was going, and you're setting up low and away and they're up in someone's ear hole. I mean, that's harder to catch. But I remember catching Francisco Liriano when he was coming back from one of his injuries. And he was one of those guys with that slider where he could start it and go batter's box to batter's box. I mean, it's like a wiffle ball. And I mean, even though it had that much movement, if I set up in on a righty kind of back ankle slider, that's where it was going to be. And so it took a little while to get used to, but you started to figure out that even though there's that much movement, they knew where they wanted to start it. And if they were telling you, hey, I want to bury a curveball back foot to a lefty, and I set up over there, that's where the pitch is going to end up. So the margin for error is not as big as it sounds.
So marry those two things for me together, the Lobos and your experience with the Twins. Does it make you a better hitter having seen some of those things? Is it harder to make the adjustment to, some of the pitchers in our league? Or is there some skill level that you can take to the diamond with the Lobos?
I think pitch recognition got a lot better for me, both when I was doing it while I was still playing town ball with the Mud Hens, but also at the Lobos. Admittedly, I struggled pretty bad the first year in the Fed because we had a lot of guys, and we still do, that are pitchers, but they don't throw hard. So you got guys that can throw low to mid sevens, even some guys that are high sixes, but it's got 4 different movements on it. So learning kind of pitch recognition was a skill that took me a year in the Fed to kind of figure out. And, we do have some guys in the league that can bring it, right? Matt Meyer's one of them, Donnie Erdahl. We happen to have quite a stable of them just on our own roster. But, a guy like Cliff Christopherson for Rosemont, who I played with a little bit for Baseball 365 for a season or two. I mean, that's a guy who, he's going to throw a ball out of the same tunnel. He's not going to overwhelm you, but it's going to move 3 different directions. Being able to pick up that spin, be able to pick up that velocity and hunt those speeds. That's a skill that I definitely developed working with these guys, because they change speeds so effectively that once you've seen it enough, right? We're not going to have guys going from 103 to 89 like Duran does, but guys that are going low 8s down to the low 7s with their fastball changeup, if you are good at picking that up and having that good pitch recognition, that's definitely a skill that's highly thought of in a league like ours.
Another experience you got to enjoy in your role with the Twins was catching the All-Star game when it was here at Target Field. Did you have a chance to run into some of the baseball immortality that was running around at that
Yeah.
time?
Oh my goodness. I mean, that was Derek Jeter's last year, right? So I mean, we're talking about our generation, and for most of those guys that are in our 30s and 40s, I mean, even older than that, like everybody, Derek Jeter was the man. But as a kid, Derek Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr., Kirby Puckett, like 1, 2, 3, you don't even have to say what order. It's just you grew up in Minnesota. That's who it was. So just getting to meet him was really cool. I got to spend the whole weekend down at Target Field. I was there when the guys reported to the clubhouse for workout day. Helped out during the home run derby. I was in the World bullpen, so I got to meet a lot of those guys that are the stars of today. I got to warm up a young Jose Barrios for the World team as he started the game. He's with the Twins obviously at the time, but it was one of those experiences where one story that still blows my mind to this day. We were during the workout day, and I'm out in the outfield just shagging fly balls like every other nondescript person on the planet who's there. Guy comes up next to me, puts his arm on my shoulder. He goes, "Hey man, love your number." And I turn and I look. It's freaking Mike Trout. And
No way.
because one of the cool things, like, it's the All-Star game, so I didn't have to wear some like 89 or anything on my back. I got to wear a jersey with my number 27, my name on the back. And he's got his 27 on and turns and says hi to me and all this. And he reaches his hand out to shake mine. He goes, "I'm Mike." I'm like, "Of course you are." Like, Mike who? You know what I mean? Like, but that's just kind of one of the cool things that I think I've cemented doing this is, at the end of the day, like, these are all just guys in a clubhouse. And yeah, they do this game at a level that some of us can't even comprehend. But, at the end of the day, they want to hang out with the boys in the clubhouse and talk about each other's cleats and like all the stuff that we do coming up in high school, college, or, we all had the chance to do it somewhere else. But yeah, I got to meet a lot of MLB immortality, but at the end of the day, they were just a bunch of baseball dudes, which was a lot of fun.
So you mentioned as Minnesota kids, it was Jeter and Griffey and Puckett, and those were kind of the three of the four Mount Rushmore. Maybe the fourth for me was Cal Ripken
Sure.
on that
Yeah.
list, but I understand you have a pretty neat Jeter moment from the home run derby the year the All-Star game was here. Want to share it?
Sure, yeah. So we were in the clubhouse during the rain delay during the home run derby, and so if anybody remembers that, the home run derby was, I think it was almost 2 hours delayed because of a thunderstorm that rolled through. Got a great picture out of it though, because there's a huge rainbow over Target Field that I think everybody's seen that picture right before the derby restarted. But while during that rain delay, we're all sitting in the clubhouse. National League's on the visitors side, American League is in the Twins clubhouse, and myself, one of the other bullpen catchers that was kind of there for the night, some of the clubbies, we were sitting in the cafeteria area watching MLB Network and ESPN's coverage of the night, and they were filling it with time, whatever. And a couple of guys got up, and I was sitting at the table by myself, just kind of checking my phone, checking in with my wife, who was pregnant with our first at the time, and they were at the stadium for the derby. I'm like, "How's everybody doing?"
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, the guy walks up next to me, and it's Derek Jeter, Dylan Betances, Robinson Cano. And Jeter looks at me, and he goes, "Hey, can we sit with you?" And I kind of look at it a bit, and I'm like, "Bro, you could tell me to leave." But he's like, No, you can stay here. Like, we'll come sit. And so, about a half hour of I'm sitting here like completely little kid in a candy store, starstruck. Derek Jeter's across the table from me, and we're talking baseball, and Captain Cool is as cool as he seems, as you'd think he is. And it was one of those moments where the little kid actually came out of me during the All-Star game, and we were, I kind of broke my professional protocols. And I look at him, I'm like, "All right, here's the deal, man. And tell me no, you can just tell me to leave right now." I go, "I got the All-Star game program that's got the collage view on the front." I go, "If you sign it for me, you're going to make like my life." And he's like, "Oh, heck yeah, man, go get that." So I walk over my bag, grab a Sharpie. And so I got this, Derek Jeter autographed All-Star game program framed in my office, kind of a forever memory of just spending like an hour with him, literally just talking baseball. I mean, we talked everything from tracking a slider to, getting jumps on pitchers to checking people out in the stands, like, just like all the kind of stuff that these guys go through on a day-to-day basis. And it was such a fascinating, just complete knowledge dump where I just sat there and listened for like an hour. These guys talking about baseball, and it was unbelievable experience to just sit there with a guy that you grew up idolizing, and you're like, bro, you're just another ball player. Like you're speaking my language, and this is awesome.
Yeah, what a cool moment. It's always great to hear stories of guys you looked up to being generous with their time and their stories. And, obviously you weren't anybody to Derek Jeter, but the fact that he, took the time to engage in that level of conversation just, is a good testament of who he really is when the cameras aren't on him.
Yeah, and I mean, you look across our game, and I think you won't find any players that aren't like that. I think our game is such an accessible one that if you run into anybody, whether it's Royce Lewis, Byron Buxton, or Ty France, like they're going to give everybody the time of day because, if they get, especially some of those guys that don't get recognized very often, like they're definitely going to be all about it. So
I want to transition a little bit into some of the things you've done around coaching and growing the game.
it's okay.
Part of your experience with the Twins has been working with a program called the RBI program. Tell us, first of all, what is it for those who haven't heard of it, but also what it means to you and what your role is with it.
Yeah, so the Twins RBI program, kind of one of those things that's a little close to my heart that I've really grown to love being involved with. It got started back in the day. Kirby Puckett was one of the first people that launched this, and the original mission was to grow the game of baseball in the inner city, right, where it had been and still is kind of on life support. And so the Twins latched onto that and kind of passed the torch to Torrey Hunter, who passed it to Denard Span, who passed it to Buxton and Royce Lewis. And these guys that are kind of the face of the Twins are very invested in continuing to grow our game throughout not just the inner city, but just around the state. And the Twins have invested a lot of time and resources into building baseball fields that are accessible for everybody, into providing programming for kids and parents around even as simple things of how to find the right size equipment and where to get it. And they do glove giveaways. And there's just so many good things that they do to continue to give back to kids who may not be able to participate in our sport. So it's been a really great opportunity for me to be involved with a lot of those things, from coaching coaches to being around the clinics and helping with the teams that travel. Twins RBI also has an all-star team that competes with other all-star teams from other MLB organizations in a tournament. I believe this year's in Chicago. It might have been the last couple of years too, but they participate in a tournament, and there's this great opportunity for these kids to experience kind of that high level of competition if they aren't able to participate in some of these national showcases or play for a club, for whatever reason. So it's a great, it's just such an awesome thing that the Twins and really everybody in MLB does now.
I understand you had a big day on Saturday with the program. MLB Network was in. Tell us what we can look forward to seeing in terms of that.
Yeah, so MLB Network came out. They run a program called MLB Spotlight that airs on Sundays, and they caught wind of something that the Twins were marketing in North Minneapolis at Rod Crew All-Star Field, which was they were going to do a good sportsmanship day. And the thrust of it was kind of to have 3 different events. There was going to be an event for parents where they were going to talk about how to be just a good sport of your kid and how to steward them, be a good steward of the game, how to support teams, how to even helping them out with, that team manager role of parents who would be interested in volunteering for that, what that might even mean to be that team mom or that team dad. And then the second part was we had a youth clinic where we had a bunch of kids at the field and we just took them through a MLB style practice. They did some drills for each position, got an opportunity to just be on the field and wear the Twins emblem for the day. They all got a glove for it. And then the last part of the day was we had all of our Twins RBI coaches for the 15, 16, 17, and 8U levels come out, and we ran them through a coaching clinic and just gave them kind of drills, skills, techniques for pitching, base running, hitting, catching. I did a 20-minute just session with them on some drills they can do to take their catchers through some daily activities, what to look for, and kind of wrapped it all up in a bow for that so that the RBI program could have a good baseline for the season. And MLB was out for the day shooting, and so they got a lot of B-roll, some interviews, got to interact with the kids. It sounds like it's going to air on June 13th.
Definitely keep our eye out for that and remind everyone when that's going to drop. That will be fun to see one of our own on MLB Network for sure.
Yeah.
So let's take all of those experiences. We've talked a little bit about your time with the Lobos, talked about your time as the Twins bullpen catcher. We've talked about your time with the RBI program. I also understand you do a lot of coaching and consulting. You've done it for Augsburg. You've done it for St. Kate's. You do it for your own children's teams. You do it, I'm sure, with the Lobos, helping, work with some of your guys. What can you do to kind of make those around you better, whether it be the youth level, guys you're playing with? What advice do you have for some of us who are trying to be better teammates and better coaches?
I mean, I think there's a unique perspective that every catcher has, right? And I think I maybe said this earlier, but our position really is one of service. We're the only one that faces the other direction. Our actions are very much amplified because we're wearing a big goofy helmet and all this equipment, and so I think a lot of players put a lot of stock in that. I do believe that as far as the coaching side goes, it's the more I've been around at the youth level, it really just comes down to identifying ways to be an energy giver and eliminate those ways that you're an energy taker. And I think there's been, it really depends on the sport and the level, but there's a noticeable shift in the way that a lot of kids approach the experience of playing youth athletics nowadays. And there is a very noticeable me first mentality to a lot of players that want to know what's my exit velo, what's my arm rate, what's my spin rate, what's my pull down, like all of these things. And, I've really tried to keep the perspective with those players of, do those things, right? Because those numbers matter when it comes to elevating yourself and having measurable ways to continue to grow your development as a player. But don't ever lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, this game is about recording 21 or 27 outs before the other team scores more runs than you do. And so, we take this game a lot of times and make it more complicated than it needs to be. Throw the ball over the white thing and turn left at first base. And at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of dudes that want to hang out together. And in our league, I think that the teams that do the best are the ones that have identified and embraced that. And you look at, your team with the A's, the Pipers come to mind, the Lobos, the Grays, Hastings Hurricanes, and you look in those dugouts and it's all smiles and it's all enjoyment and it's guys that really just want to be around each other. And when you want to be around people, you respect their opinion. And so I think, for me, as far as the teammate side, I think I've bought in a lot of cachet by just continuing to embrace that servant role and never bringing guys down, always finding ways to lift them up, and also just being honest, right? I'm not going to paint a rainbow for a guy that's having a cloudy day. You know what I mean? So if your slider's flat, I'm going to come out and tell you it's flat. We need to either adjust your grip or we got to shelve it for a while and work on it the next inning out. So
we were playing Newmarket and I was laboring through a couple of innings and I just knew I didn't really have it that day. And a couple of the guys, it's ultimately my decision to pull myself for our group. And, a couple of the guys were saying, yeah, you just figured it out. You got 3 ground balls in the second, that's you, let's muscle through a couple more innings. And we looked at Dan Miller, our catcher, and he's like, no, he's done.
He's done. Yep. Yeah. I mean, and
So,
you value guys like that. I mean, whether it's your own teammate or, an assistant coach, right? I've had assistant coaches in the past that I've worked with, whether it's at the club level or otherwise, where, I'll make a decision and they'll come to me and they'll just say like, hey, let's not do that. And then they'll explain to me why. And sometimes I'll rethink it. And there's been other times where I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And, you win some, you lose some. That's kind of just part of the game. I value those players as teammates, those coaches as assistants. I know that in the situations I've been in as an assistant coach, I've felt valued in that aspect where I don't feel like I have to hide my opinion on things or, put a sugar coating on it so that I don't hurt anybody's feelings. This game is already brutal enough in and of itself. You don't have to, add in the fact that if you're going to get hurt, because somebody says something to you about the way you play, the way you coach, the way you manage, then you're kind of in the wrong sport to start with. So I think a lot of guys have thick enough skin, whether it's a teammate or a player. At least hopefully my players do. I don't think I've ever had an issue with a player where I've told them the truth. I'm usually pretty upfront with them about that. Most of my player meetings, our parent meetings at the beginning of the season. I don't know if you've read the book, The Matheny Manifesto. Have you read that one?
I have not, but I'm going to add it to my
Add it
list
to
right
your
away.
so it's a great book. When he was managing the Cardinals, he took over a youth team and he wrote this book called The Matheny Manifesto, where he just kind of walks through the season and what expectations they set, how they managed parents, how they managed parent expectations, player expectations. At the beginning of the season, he sat down with all the parents and basically handed them a contract in the same way that they would have handed a professional player contract and said, this is what I expect from you over the next 6 months of me coaching your boys. He's kind of one of the guys, and it's not a new thing, but he put it down in writing of that 24-hour rule around, if you got something that's an issue, right, came up during a game, sit on it for 24 hours and then let's talk about it. And so, that's one of those things that with my parents, whether it's volunteering for a U softball team or working with collegiate athletes or club, I always like to set that expectation up front that I will never hide anything from any of you. If you have questions about playing time, you have questions about positioning, if you have questions about the way I manage the calls that I make, bring them to me. I will tell you why. I will never hide from the why. And if you disagree, that's fine, because at the end of the day, I'm still the one running the team. So we can disagree about it, and I will listen to your opinion. And if I don't agree, I'm not going to necessarily change. But I've set that expectation with parents on the coaching side that I will listen and I'll be honest. And if Johnny doesn't have it, I'll tell you that Johnny doesn't have it, right? But I'll also tell you, here's how he can get it. And I think that's the really unique thing about our sport is you don't have to be the biggest or the fastest or the hardest throwing or have the 110 mile an hour exit velocity to play this game. It really is a game for everybody, and it is so skill specific that it is very developmental. You can make yourself into a better player by committing to it. I'm not going to guarantee, right? You can't guarantee anybody that by doing it you're going to start throwing 95, but if you're a marginal high school pitcher, especially in our state, there's baseball for you to play, right? You can play at the high school level as a marginal pitcher, and then you can go play for a C team and play town ball for 10, 50. I mean, how many teams across the state are littered with guys that were good to average, right? I was good to average in high school, and I've been playing town ball since 2009.
Baseball is such a unique sport. I think it's so great and that is fair. You seem to get out of it what you put into it. I love that, element of the game.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Matheny Manifesto. I love so much of that contract, setting the expectations. That seems like it would work so well for youth sports through high school, even at the professional level. Even at the professional level, there has to be some of that expectation setting and, just level setting with the players in order to kind of get the most, out of a collective unit. Baseball is such a unique game that it's an individual game wrapped in a team sport. And I love everything you shared there. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and defend my guy Rocco for a second here because I know he's caught a lot of heat lately, and they're on a
From
roll.
your manager mostly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know, right? But I do think that it's fair to recognize that at the professional level, the way that manager relationship is reflected is not what it was of the past with, a guy like Tom Kelly. I mean, one of the most respected guys in our Twins organization's history, but he was a hard ass, right? He was just one of those guys that, what's the image we all think of? We think of TK and the Zubas with the stogie on the mound, just feeding fastballs in the machine. Hey, but I do think there is a recognition now that it is much more of a partnership now between managers and players, and there is a lot more give and take, and there's a lot more information sharing. That's not to say that the inmates run the asylum or anything like that, but when you talk about guys that are player managers, it's not because they're soft, it's because they understand that today's players, and even players of the past too, right? I'm not going to say they were dumb, but today's players understand the game on a level that is kind of unfathomable. And the way that they're able to internalize all of the data points that they get on any given day, how their body feels, how they're taking care of their body, the nutrition, all that stuff's so cutting edge now that in order for that stuff to work, managers need to be able to let guys do those things. And you can't have a cookie cutter approach anymore where you just come in and say, this is my ship and I'm steering it. It is very much a partnership. And I always bristle at the the player manager is soft. I don't think I just don't think it's that they're soft. They understand the environment they're in, and it is much more of a partnership. There's much more give and take now. There's much more. I mean, think about all things we see now with all the swag and the players weekend, like that kind of stuff. Was that the baseball was used to be such a rigid game, and now there's personality, and they want players to be themselves and have the colorful bats for players weekend, and the Victus does the pencil bat and the crayon, but like that stuff's great in my opinion. I am all for it. I grew up on baseball the same way everybody else did, but I don't want it to be the same. It's great when guys have personality and you can market those faces and those people. I mean, how long has one of the best players on the planet, nobody freaking knew his name? Mike Trout just lived in complete anonymity except for Los Angeles, Anaheim area, because the league just didn't know how to market them, and they've kind of unlocked some of that stuff now. And I do think there's a lot there between managers that understand that these guys are only growing the game with their deep knowledge and personality.
So many of the guys in our league coach their children in youth sports. And I know something that I struggle with is helping these kids understand how wrought with failure this game is. They expect to succeed more than half of the time, and that's just
Sure.
obviously we know not the reality in this game. So how can you help youth players deal with failure, have a good mental positive track, and learn more about this game, staying engaged while dealing with that amount of failure?
Yeah, I mean, again, back to this honesty piece, right? There's going to be tears. You're going to see it. You're going to see kids cry, and they're going to be sad, and they're going to carry it with them, and no amount of flush it next pitch is going to fix that. But I do think that there is a lot of value to maintaining that consistent approach with them and saying, like, look, I mean, I think you even said it, like, this game gives you what you put into it. And if you continue to keep the kids involved as they grow in the sport and they want to keep coming back year after year, that's how you count yourself a successful season. And like, I'll just give my three goals that I give to my parents every year when we do our parent meeting, and we're setting our expectations and doing all that. But when we talk about how are we going to measure this season as a success, it's not going to come down to tournament medals, and it's not going to come down to our win-loss record or runs scored or, all these other accolades. We are going to measure success by if the kids had fun at every event that we attended, if we learned something, right? We talk about the 1% better rule with a lot of our players, and making sure that we're focusing on not trying to learn a brand new skill every practice or game, but just getting 1% better and trying to compound that over time so that you leave a season significantly better than when you left it. And then the last thing that we measure success by is if they want to come back and do it again. And hopefully that over the course of the season, that is practice to practice, game to game, and then at the end of the year, they want to sign up and do it again for the next season.
So well said. The Lobos are back in action. You'll have 2 games over the next week in between episodes for us. The Lake Wolves will be hosting St. Patrick on Thursday, and you'll be at Lonsdale on Sunday. A couple of good Southern Division tilts. Care to share any inside baseball from what we can expect out of the Lobos in the next week?
Well, the St. Patrick game, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. As we talked about, many of us are coaching our own kids. My daughter's softball team has a doubleheader in Hager City, Wisconsin. So my ability to get over to King Park from Hager City before game time will be pretty difficult. So I'm planning on missing that one unless something comes up. Or if we get rain on Thursday, then maybe both get rescheduled and I can make it at a later date. Lonsdale, I mean, I think, pitching-wise, we're lined up pretty well. Since we played on Saturday, everybody should be at full rest. Lineup wise, it looks like, I was just checking availability. It looks like we're going to have the majority of our guys there, save for me on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, as far as what to expect, I think you're gonna get that good pitching rotation, lots of strikes, good defense behind it, and then with the lineup there, we're gonna score some runs. And so I'm excited to kind of keep this wagon turned in the right direction. When I'm a part of it, I'll be back behind the dish, calling the game and hopefully contributing at the plate. But I'm excited for a lot of the newer guys we have this year. Calvin Nelson, unfortunate on the bump on the pitching side, but he's been hitting the ball well. Donnie Batista has been a ray of sunshine for me. having a backup catcher for a change has been an incredible feeling. I've got to play third base against Milltown the other day. I didn't have to go behind the plate, and so it's nice to kind of get off of my legs for a game or two here or there. Donnie, I think 6 for his last 7, so he's been a great addition to the lineup. Just pounding that ball over the second baseman's head and keeping it in front of the outfielders. Yeah, I mean we're gonna do what Lobos do, and we'll hopefully come out on the left-hand column these next 2.
Well, we had Tori on last year. He kind of dropped a nugget about a new stadium, brand new facility opening up in Lakeville. Do you have an update on that? When can we expect perhaps the Lobos to have some new digs?
Yeah, and I'll publicly admit, right, King is a controversial place to play. Some of us like it more than others, but as far as the new ballpark that is coming up, last I heard, the dugouts had been poured, the light stanchions are up, the black dirt was delivered, so that there's going to be some grading going on, hopefully planting of seed here soon. It'll be a turf mound, turf home plate area. Take for that what you will, but it's moving along. There's potential, depending on how things go over the next couple months, that we may be able to have a game or two in the fall before we make our trip down to Roy Hobbs. That's probably sitting at about 20-25% likelihood, but that could change. But the plan right now is to hopefully have that stadium ready to open her up and cut the ribbon next season for the Lobos. And then they're also working on getting a town ball team there. So I'm not sure if they're going to be B or C. I guess that's going to depend on the points. But yeah, plan on that is to have a new stadium up and running by next season. And they're going to hopefully add around it to make it into a whole new complex down there.
It'll be great to have we'll say a house that's befitting of a fantastic team down in Lakeville. But thank you so much, Brian, for joining, for taking the time to be on with us and share some of the stories that you've been able to experience in and around the game. It's been great getting to know you, and best of luck this season.
Thanks, Josh. We're looking forward to, I know we don't play you guys until we get to the playoffs maybe, but we'll definitely see you guys around the ball field. And, as always, if you see me around, come say hi. I promise, like I said, Lobos, we're a bunch of family. So if you want to come chat with us or come have some Toppers pizza after a game, we'll make sure to take care of you.
Well, we actually will be down there July 10th, and it's a league tilt. So that'll be my first experience at King.
All right. I missed that. July 10th. There it is, Apple Valley. All right. Well, then I will see you at the ball field as a contender then instead of just a friend.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's friendly. But yeah, absolutely looking forward to lacing them up against you guys and seeing some of the guests that we've had on and breaking some bread with some toppers.
It'll be there. All right, man.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Appreciate it.
Loved so much of what Brian shared with us. I particularly love his stance on catcher being a service position. It just blew my mind when he said that. I think it's so true, but really a great guest, and hope you all enjoyed that.
Absolutely, especially as a guy personally who spent some time behind the plate. Always, I mean, catching relatively new position for me, to be honest. So, and a guy with that much to say about it, I'm all ears, man. So, no, that was awesome.
Well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Fed Up. We'll be back with you next week. Until then, stay fed.